Hey Spencer, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you, Asher.
Yep, long time. For anyone who doesn't know who you are, or for anyone who doesn't know you, who do you say you are?
This point in my life, a father and husband first, and I guess after those, I try to be a good friend and colleague as well.
Good deal. Tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about how you grew up. I guess prior to when we met in high school, what was life like for you?
Yeah, so you might not know this. I was born in Morristown, New Jersey.
Oh,
I lived there for, I think we lived there about 2 weeks. Essentially, my parents needed to stay there before I was born. They couldn't fly because I was like so close. So, and then like a lot of people that end up in Dalton, moved from New Jersey to Dalton for the carpet industry.
mm,
I think my dad got a job. His first one was with Shaw, and so that brought us to Dalton. And so, as far as I can remember, I've always been in Dalton. But fun fact, I'm a New Jersey guy. So
that's pretty funny. So
yeah,
then,
but yeah, so born and raised in Dalton. I'd say pretty middle class upbringing in that area. I always tried to be active and do different things around town, play sports and whatnot, and yeah, and then I guess met you around was it late middle school or early high school?
it is one of those. I
Yeah,
I can't even quite remember. I'm trying to remember even if I went to middle school or high school at this point. I'm like, I think that was a part of my life.
right. Yeah, it's hard to remember those things. I've like found at this point, I remember all of the extreme highs and the extreme lows. It's hard to remember like that stuff in between that filled up the majority of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and typical went to high school and at Dalton there, and I'd say that I look back on those days with a lot of regret. I feel a lot wiser now.
Hmm.
I feel like my priorities were what am I going to do tonight? What am I going to do this weekend?
Hmm.
Versus like what's gonna benefit me now that I can use them for the future. So it's funny how I felt like I was living day to day, and I know this isn't typical or unique to me, but most people probably wish that their self now could go back and talk to the person they used to be and knock some sense into them for
Hmm.
sure.
I guess what would you tell yourself if you had a chance to go back?
Study more, um, because what you do now is gonna, affect your future. Um, I never really prioritized like doing well in school to set me up better in the future. I ended up going to a good school, Georgia Southern, and graduating from there, but it was always bumpy. Like the road was bumpy to get to where I got. Also, like I feel like my ego was probably big back then. I tell myself to be humble and have some more humility. But at that age, it's hard to know those things until you kind of learn different lessons to help yourself understand that. And I think also like from where you and me knew each other was wrestling, right? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, we went to practice and wrestled, like tried hard there, but never went above and beyond to try to like really do the stuff that's necessary to like be a champion. So like that can translate to all aspects of life. So like
Yeah.
uh those types of things are what I'd go back and tell myself. Um, Probably if I could go talk to high school Spencer. Yeah.
That, that's a good insight. I like that. It's funny because now, present day, I kind of find myself being in a recent transition and kind of either finding myself reverting back to like, what would you say, what's comfortable, what's convenient, and then kind of shutting parts of the world out and trying to at times try to wrap my head around like what it is that I'm doing. And to your point, it seems like it kind of goes back to that thing where it's like you feel like you're giving enough and you're sweating, you're doing all those things, but then you know internally what it is that you can get away with. And then sometimes it's like, I don't want to be compared to this person or that person, or you hear stories of like, oh, this person wrestled with like a broken foot or like a hip or this or that. And it's like, maybe I sprained my ankle and I felt like, oh, it's this big to do. And the coach is kind of calling you out on it. And it's like, oh, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. And it's like, hmm,
Yeah,
now life is kind of looking a little different. Like you say you don't know what's going on, but then different things kind of point back at you to be like, you know what you're doing, but you got to choose to be honest about it.
right, for sure. And it's funny, I remember like specific examples. And if Coach Mitchell listens or watches this, sorry. But I remember like when we would do laps or do our workouts, and he'd turn in the other way, or the coaches would turn the other way, maybe take a rep off or two and those types of things. So
Yeah,
just little things like that. And that's like one specific example, but that translates to all aspects of life, I think. So,
that's true. I guess what was it that brought you to wrestling? Like, why did you choose that of all sports?
um, I think my like the philosophy for my mom and dad were like, let's introduce them to everything and
Mhm.
see what sticks. And it's funny. That's kind of what my wife and I have talked about doing with our two kids. And I always loved pretty much all the sports. I don't think I was good at baseball. I wasn't good at basketball, but like the two that stuck were like wrestling and football, I think.
Mhm.
And so my friend at the time, I think Jay Adamson, his dad talked to me one time. He's like, "Hey, Ruble, you should get out there and try wrestling." And I tried it and loved it. And that was kind of that.
Yeah.
It was the one that stuck. Uh, and I just kind of focused on that and I guess sophomore year dropped football and then just wrestled pretty
Mhm.
much the rest of high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that seemed like the thing to do. I didn't seem to wrap my head around that for a bit because it was almost like doing sports after school was something to do. It kind of kept you busy. And with football, I guess there was this talk of like quitters don't win, or like once you start something, you got to see it through. So it's like, oh, you got to do this for 4 years, even if you're not the best at it. And it's like, why not? I think my dad had mentioned it, and my older brother had mentioned it. Was like focusing on one thing would probably get you further than trying to be like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, but I think you made the right choice. I regret dropping football.
Mm,
I so I'm such a big fan now and I did love it, but kind of goes back to what I said earlier. I at that point in life was a knucklehead and I cared more about my social life, I think,
mm,
than that type of stuff. And so that was where the priority was at the time. And I I think I had a little bit of a rebellious attitude towards football at sometimes, and so I dropped it. But that's a regret. So I think you made the right choice.
gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
I guess it's weird. It's kind of good having these conversations because sometimes it's like you run through things in your head and you kind of question what it is that you're doing. And I guess here recently I've been trying to figure out like, okay, what's the next thing, but at the same time try to be as present as possible and not look too far in advance because sometimes there's that fear of like, am I going to make the wrong decision? And sometimes when you're younger, it's like you're not really worried about making the wrong decisions because you've got somewhat of a path planned out for you. It's you're going to do
Right.
4 years and then maybe you go to school, you go through those courses, you get a job, and then once you get out here in the real world, it's like, well, um, now you've got to chart out a plan for your life. And I guess that looks a little different for everybody, but sometimes it's like you get caught up in thinking you have to have it right like today. And if it's not right today, you're just gonna set a whole bunch of people up to be disappointed. And then you can run into the thing of where I've run into it. It's, well, if I close myself off from everyone that I know, then there's no one to disappoint. But then it's like that that really doesn't work out like that because I, I'm finding out that people are not more concerned about you disappointing them if you stay in communication, if you stay open and honest. It's like, and expectation seems to be one of those things where it's like you have to shrink your expectations less and less, or maybe do away with them. Like, okay, I like the big thing is you want someone to hold their word. If they say they're going to do something, they do that, because then once they don't, it's like, well, that person gets a a reputation for themselves, and it's like that's what they become to be. They're a person that can't be trusted. That, and when you kind of see yourself as that, it's like, okay, is there any way back, or is it that's what I'm gonna be for a long time? And it's like
Yeah,
a weird pit to kind of crawl in or fall in, and then you're just like, oh, there's no way out. It's just what I do. I just let people down, so to speak.
right. Yeah, and that's a big concern or fear of mine now is I think about that a lot because I remember when throughout the course of life being let down and it kind of sticks with you.
Yeah.
And so like earlier asked who I am, I said father and husband. It's like really priority one in life for me is to do both those things to the best of my ability.
Hmm.
And so like every time I promise something to my 4 year old, I like have a conversation internally that you better not, you got to follow through. You better not let him down because he'll remember that. And then the next time you say I promise,
Right.
it's it's not going to hold the same amount of weight. And the same in a relationship. And so yeah, it's good to be held accountable and have somebody to kind of help you keep that standard, I think.
I guess, was that something for you to did you take to that easily, or was that something you had to like embrace one way or another?
No, I feel like I've always valued being trustworthy and honest. I sometimes it's like in that scenario as a parent, it's easier to like you call it many different things, but like a false promise, like,
Hmm.
hey, if you are good today, we'll go get ice cream tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or if like we had swim practice this morning, if you listen to the teacher, we'll go do said like we'll go ride your bike later, something like that. And like just little things like that. Those are the things that are hard to keep up with sometime, and you can make 10 of those a day and just kind of use that as like a crutch, right, to get them to do something. So
Hmm.
in that scenario, like I got to be careful. But as far as like, I'd say like a meaningful promise to a friend or someone in my family or at work, like try to put a priority and following through on that.
I guess, how do you what's the what's the difference between like a false promise and a meaningful promise?
Well, like the false promise, that scenario really only pops up for me like with my kids, just because it's like little things I tell them to get them to do things. And
Mm,
some people might say that's okay, but and it probably is here and there. They're
yeah.
1 and 4, but I don't want to make it a habit. But like if I'm talking to my wife and we're talking about something we're going to do this weekend, or if whatever the occasion may be, if I make a promise to her, then I'd say that's probably more meaningful than telling my 1 year old we'll go get ice cream
Gotcha.
if he's good. So that's like the difference I was pointing out, I guess.
I got you. So
Yeah.
so then from going through high school and kind of getting through wrestling and things like that, were things different going into college? Like, did your social life kind of stay the same, or what did you decide to get into once you were making that transition?
Yeah, so um, if I could go back and talk to myself in college, it'd be a similar conversation to high school. I
Hmm.
prioritized having fun and you know the social aspect of college over school. I had a really rough first year and had to have a strong conversation with my parents. They kind of wanted me to come home and but I was using student loans, so I was kind of paying for it myself. I was like, well, I'm gonna stay and try another year
Hmm.
and so after that rough first year, I kind of started getting a better understanding of what was necessary to be successful there. And then after you get deeper into your college tenure, right, you start learning more about different career paths, um, what can be affected down the road if you don't take it seriously at that point in time. And so when I went there, I had no idea what I wanted to do. When I was looking for colleges, I waited till like the last minute. I had no idea where I wanted to go. And I just ended up at Georgia Southern, and luckily they accepted me. Um, but so I kind of went into pre-business just under not knowing really which direction to go, and I knew that had the most path, different directions you could go, and so yeah, I had a lot of fun that first year. I found a job at a local pool store, repairing they call them like dolphins now, but you know the things that swim around at the bottom of pools to pick up the leaves.
Yeah, yeah.
I repaired those and I was like the shop manager, so I would talk to people as they came in and help them out. And then I was in a class one day and this guy said, "Hey, would you want to work at a bar?" And I said, "Yeah. I like to have a good time and make money at the same time." So I went and worked at a bar there and I did that for 4 years, I think. Started out as what we called a bottle boy, picking trash up,
Mhm.
doing the dirty job at the bar, and then I was a bar back doing ice and stuff, and then I bartended for a couple years. So that took up a lot of time for me at college. I so school, doing that, and trying to work out when I could. That's kind of what it looked like for me. And then I ended up finding myself in the logistics program there uh, after the pre-business. I was walking down the hall one day, and it was like, you know, top salaries for business school students out of Georgia Southern. Logistics was first. I was like, what's logistics? I want to do that.
Mhm.
So that's the path I went, and yeah. So my first job out of school was in logistics, just selling for a logistics company, and um, that's kind of what it looked like. So did you after high school and you went to school?
Mhm.
Where did you go again?
I went to Southern Poly at first and then
Okay.
transferred over to Tech after about 3 years doing the transfer program that Georgia has.
Awesome. So I think Georgia Southern had they call it the G-Track
Yeah,
program or
yeah. I think that was it.
awesome. I had some friends that did that. But before we left that subject, I was curious, so you were active in athletics in high school. Did you gravitate towards any club teams or try to stay active in college? Or is that
I,
hard to kind of find for you to?
initially when I was going in, the thought was just focus on school and not really get into athletics. But then I ended up joining the frisbee team and
Oh, fun.
played that maybe 2 years, like half of my maybe the second half of my freshman year to like sophomore and like the beginning of my junior year before doing the transfer.
Awesome. Yeah, that's like a struggle for me. I missed it so much. I tried to do the club wrestling team when I first
Hmm.
got there. It was like a bunch of guys like me that it wasn't an organized thing at the time. But a bunch of guys like me that just wanted to like find a fun way to work out
Yeah.
and so I did that for a little bit, but I realized, I was in such bad shape and again, just kind of like the social aspect of college got in the way, and I kind of dropped off of that. But it was like a void I felt like I had.
Yeah.
And I was in a fraternity, so we had intramural sports, and that kind of helped me.
Well, I guess before even getting to frisbee, going to the gym is like school not being too big at Southern Poly, racquetball was a big thing. So like getting into that, trying to go to the gym and work out and things of that sort really made it made it like something to do. But I definitely echo what you're saying there because by the time I transferred, I'd kind of stopped with all sports, but then I figured out my body didn't really agree with that because I was having trouble just walking around the campus. And I was like, why am I having trouble walking at like 20, 21? And it's like been active all this other time. And it's going to the primary care on campus. The doctor was like, well, the best thing you could actually do is go work out. And if it works,
Yeah,
take a break and then keep working out. And I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. And then it kind of gave me a goal to um, either do rehab or work on something rather than just like go to school, go home, go to school, go home.
yeah, yeah. It's a little bit harder to stay active when you're not forced to go after school every day. Um,
That's true.
I I forget what point it was, maybe junior year, sophomore year of college. I just remember I was feeling like super weak and out of shape, and it's just like you got to get yourself together, man. And I started working out pretty consistently again at that point. Um, and then I had a lull after college for a little while,
Mhm.
focusing on the first job. And then the same like epiphany happened. I looked in the mirror and I was like, "Come on, man!" And so I started working out again a little bit, and I eventually found jujitsu because I kind of missed wrestling again at that
Okay.
point. So.
How did that go? Was it something you've been able to stick with or
Yeah, so I my first job out of school was down by the airport in Hapeville.
Mhm.
It's a city right there near the airport in Atlanta, and um, so I worked there and I lived up in Chamblee, so it was like a pretty good commute through Atlanta, right?
Mhm.
And traffic was terrible because it's like right through the middle of it, and
Yeah, yeah.
so I hated sitting in that traffic. So my first solution was I worked near a guy. I don't know if you remember John Michael Paget
Yep.
that we went to school with. We went to college together. We were still good friends, and he had started doing CrossFit at CrossFit College Park.
Mhm.
So I did it there with him for a little bit, and then we both kind of, I think, we're looking for something different. We kind of reached a peak there, or just we're getting a little tired of doing the same thing, and he found a gym called X3 Sports in
Mhm.
Inman Park in Atlanta. And he was doing jujitsu and he's like, dude, you would love it because you used to wrestle and whatnot. So that was like January 2017, I think.
Yeah.
And started there, but it was like a great spot for me because it was halfway from work to home. So I could drive there, get a good workout in, and then go home and there was no traffic. So it was great. And the class didn't start till 6, so I'd actually leave work at 5 and I'd go sit in my car and read a book while I waited on class. So I was like, it's like, knocking out two birds with one stone. I can read a little bit, I can work
Yeah.
out, and then I can go home and feel like super great about my day. Um, so I started it there and then ended up moving to one in Smyrna because I moved to Smyrna and just really fell in love with it. Then I got married and moved to Johns Creek
Mhm.
and found one in Peachtree Corners area. And
Okay.
so I did it there for a little bit, but I did it consistently until recently we moved to Chattanooga. And like I think 3 months in, I've messed my leg up pretty good.
Mhm.
It There's a move called a heel hook where your leg gets kind of torqued a good bit.
Yeah.
And like three loud pops happened in the gym and everybody was like, oh.
Ugh.
And so no like the ACL or MCL didn't get damaged, but like I had some pretty significant nerve damage. Like my whole leg was numb for a while, and my ankle like got really swollen, like the
Yeah.
size of a softball. And we had my second kid come in. I was like, man, I can't be walking around on crutches in the house, like not helping my wife lift him. So I need to take a break for a little bit. So recover from the injury, and since then I haven't got back into it. My thought process is once my 1-year-old gets to the point where like we don't have to lift him up and carry him up and down the stairs, and
Mm,
I'm not needed in that aspect around the house, then I can risk going back and doing it again. So
gotcha. That's
yeah.
pretty neat. I guess you've been able to take it with you a little bit everywhere where you've gone. Or
Yeah, it seems like it's the sport's grown so much. It's in every city now. I'm sure there's one down in Valdosta. You should check it
yeah.
out. It's great workout. Wrestlers have like a natural ability to do well at first, and but for me, it's like a meditative activity.
Mhm.
Like I feel like it really helped me be a better person just by allowing like a it's like a great place for like stress relief and just a good thing to mix in, I think, through like the monotonous weekly activities that we go through. So
That's a good point. I think I maybe went for a class or two in Valdosta that there's a American top team
mhm.
facility down there, and they had like children's class and adult classes, and I maybe wrestled with one guy that was a little bit bigger than me or about my size. It's funny because sometimes it's like thinking back to high school wrestling. I think 160 was about like the weight class that I wanted to wrestle at or where the weight was easiest. But then giving up like 30 pounds, I keep thinking, oh, I'm just smaller giving up this weight, but I've gone well above like 183 up to like 230 now. But it's like if you're not used to moving somebody that's that big or bigger, it's like, okay, well, like this guy's really is really moving and I'm just
Yeah,
trying to like kind of keep things under control and trying to learn like, okay, this is how submission works or this is how you escape from bottom and things like that. I was like, this would be neat, but for the timing, it didn't seem to work out. I picked up a little bit of disc golf maybe, but I was like, I'd still like to kind of go back to that because it's like just learning how to problem solve close quarters and not, like you said, not being too stuck into your head.
yeah, and some people kind of think of it as like human chess because it like everything outside of what's going on the mat is eliminated from your mind because if you're not focused on that one thing, you're gonna get tapped or choked or
Yeah.
um, that's to me what's so good about it is you can just focus on doing that and it's like meditation for me.
Mm.
I love disc golf too, so I'm glad you said that. I picked that up a couple years ago and I really enjoyed that. It's like an hour, it's fun, it's
Yeah,
free. So
that's true. It's
but
funny. I played a little bit and I think it was similar to like being able to play frisbee and then kind of that merging over into the other thing before at the Poly campus we used to play like a course that we kind of made up around the school, and you'd have like different lamppost or a sign or something that would be
I
like
know.
that's the whole. But then getting used to like a different disc altogether had been is it interesting and trying it out. It's like obviously you have the disc that fly well versus the other ones that don't fly as well, and it's like okay that's curious. It's interesting seeing those different things and being like it's something you can try out. You meet people while you're out there, and like it's a reason to go outside and like exercise and get out.
Yeah. I'm not very good. I'm still at the point where like I've got all the different discs in the bag, got like the putter and the mid range and the driver, but I feel like I putt mid range and drive just as good with my like driver. Like so essentially I'll just keep one disc in my hand until I start feeling like it's not doing good for me and I'll switch
Yeah.
to another one. And that's kind of my philosophy. And I don't play stick golf, so
What's
it's
that?
nice. I don't play like regular golf,
Oh,
mostly
oh, got you.
stick
I thought
golf.
you were
But
almost talking about like that. Is it croquet? The ball that's just like the stick and the mallet, and you've
oh
got to hit
yeah,
it through
no,
those hoops.
I've never done that one. probably be fun. That I've always wanted to try pickleball, kind of
Mm.
similar. Yeah. But not pickleball, cricket. Yeah.
Okay. The ones with the flat bat.
Yeah. I wish we played that more in the US because I see that they do it in some other countries. I'm like jealous. Like that looks
Mm.
like a lot of fun. So
Uh,
how long have you been in Valdosta now?
I've been in Valdosta 3 years. I moved here recently to Augusta actually,
Oh,
and
really? Okay.
just starting a new, I guess you'd say a new job, seeing what the landscape is like, and just it feels like the last 10, 11 years have been like a transition period going from like a training program to like living in one city, one state, then you kind of move on to the next and you like pack up, pick up and move, pack up, pick up and move. And it's definitely been one of those good things. I've met a lot of good people. Um, Getting out of my comfort zone, like it, I guess the challenge is like, okay, not staying cooped up inside when you're like, okay, I think I'm gonna be here for a little bit, so I'm just gonna stay in and just do what's comfortable. But it's like, no, you've got to go and like at least pick up the phone and call and do something. It doesn't have to be like an everyday thing, but like every now and then, like check in. But I
Yeah.
found it to be a good city, like most.
Yeah, I like Augusta a lot. There's a lot of different things that bring people there, right? So like the college and the the golf, but I think a lot of industry has moved there as well, and you're right on the border of South Carolina, so it's like a nice mixture of different things to do. It reminds me a lot of Chattanooga, where we are now, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. It's yeah, Augusta is interesting because it's like you've got the military, medical, and nuclear is
Mhm.
a big thing in the area,
Yeah,
and
Fort Eisenhower's huge, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess as far as I can tell, it looks big from like Google Maps and things like that.
Well, I work now for a cybersecurity training company, and I don't support the Army, but we support the Army cybersecurity workforce like development initiatives, and
Mhm.
so some of my colleagues spend a lot of time down there to work with them.
Gotcha. I remember like I lived in Augusta a few years back and I know back in like 2018, 2019, that was becoming like the big development. Everyone was talking cybersecurity and seeing that you're in it now is like, oh, that's neat. And now I guess is it more of a thing because like AI is becoming more and more developed, like there's a new platform every day or like a new implementation, a new application that it can do. Is that something you guys have to interact with?
Yeah, so I think it's become more of a term people un have come to know, or it's become more of a thing lately. It's because it's kind of like the new battlefield, right? It's like our adversaries,
Hmm.
they don't have to risk anyone's life. They're not going to escalate tensions as much as, you know, when you think of war, right? It's not good. We see what's happening in Ukraine right now. No one wants that. And so adversaries can now they can use cybersecurity attacks
Hmm.
to affect um, other countries without the risk of lives being lost. It can get pretty serious. You could shut down the grid, or cyber crimes take money, attack financial institutions or whatnot. So I think like that's one reason it's become important. And so our company, we're a training company, so we
Hmm.
I work with the federal government to help them kind of upskill their workforce, or if they need to fill roles or grow their workforce, then we help them reskill people. Um, might be a physical therapist or someone that might be, operations manager or a warehouse technician, you name it, people from all aspects of life that are interested in cybersecurity, we help agencies kind of get them to where they would want them to be at a certain level. so yeah, I think it's only going to come become more important, right? Because your money and power and electric, that's all attached to, cybersecurity related points of contact. And that's why, every time you log into an app on your phone, you got to do multi-factor authentication because it's become such a big deal. I
Right,
think so.
right. That makes sense.
Oh, one
Mm,
second. Hey,
okay,
buddy.
you're good.
Sorry about that. It's bound to happen at some point.
It's no problem. I mean, it's life.
Yeah, so yeah, that's like the big thing. You got organizations that have, 1,000 or more employees, and every employee needs to be, aware of the risk related to their workstation or their phone, and so yeah, we try to help organizations and people manage that risk a little bit better. And yeah.
That makes sense. I guess how'd you wind up in cybersecurity, or what are what are some of the things that maybe surprised you about it?
Yeah, it's funny. I always talk about how with my wife how you zig or zag so many times in life, and you wonder if you would have zigged if you would have ended up at the same spot. Like
Mm,
and so like I'm here, and never, like 10 years ago, would have never guessed I'd be in this role in cybersecurity. Because as I mentioned, I started out in logistics.
hmm
But how I got here was I grew the federal business at the logistics company I was with, like moving government freight. So we moved stuff for FEMA, Postal Service, Department of Defense. And I was in a cubicle doing inside sales, and I knew that long term I wanted to get to more of an outside sales role. And
hmm
so I found a job with HT Supply in Atlanta, working with housing authorities, military bases, universities. We call it SLED, state local education.
hmm
And so anything you see in a Home Depot, I was selling that to those entities I just mentioned,
Okay.
with the majority being housing authorities. Uh, so so from there, I got to be close with a colleague. He moved to this cybersecurity company. He posted on LinkedIn one day that they had a position open, and I messaged him and said, "Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about that?" And he said, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Maybe." And so we talked and followed him over here, and that's kind of how I ended up here. I think I've been here 3 years now, and
Cool.
really feel like it's a good spot. It's the first position where I feel like I'm actually like the HD Supply. I felt like I was at least trying to make a difference because working with the universities and the housing authorities, I was trying to make their properties better for the tenants.
Mm.
And so that was fun, and I felt like I was helping people in that aspect. But with cybersecurity now, really trying to help organizations and help our tax dollars be used to manage risk. And I work with some agencies that support partner countries around the world, so being able to help them kind of in their workforce development efforts. So it's fun to be able to do those things. But that's kind of how I ended up here. Always been in federal sales and just kind of moved to from industry to industry, and now I find myself in cybersecurity.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So are you a civil engineer now?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Civil. I've spent a lot of time doing like construction work. Um, had some opportunity to do some design. Like recently, when I was in Valdosta, I did some geotechnical work, which deals a lot with foundation design and trying to basically lay down the foundation recommendations for when people before people go to construction, whether they be businesses or anything that's industrial power companies, things like that. So that was pretty neat having a chance to both work in the field and then kind of do a debrief, especially working in Georgia. You get to see all the different types of soils. We have rocks in some area the further up north you go. And being able to have the would I don't know if you'd call it like the hands-off approach, but kind of that you get a project or you get like a multitude of projects and you're expected to turn them around within like 3 to 6 weeks. And it's just like this volume at times where it's one, like at the start of the year, things may seem like they're a little bit slower, but then as the year goes on, summertime and like right before the holidays, it's almost like this water faucet opens up and then it's like, okay, we got to travel here, travel there, collect this dirt, go through it, sort it, and then make recommendations for it. And then also being able to work within a smaller company, but to where you can still rely on somebody else to be like, hey, need help here. What do you think of this? Also being able to learn from people that are more senior than you and kind of point you in the right directions to where it's like, okay, this thing is simple, but it takes practice where you've got to like step back, think through it, and give it your best shot because you're not going to get it on the first try. And kind of having that encouragement from someone that's been doing it for a while, it's like, oh, okay, this isn't a I've got to knock it out of the park every time I get it type thing. But it does feel good once you've practiced something and it feels like, okay, I actually understand it. And it doesn't feel like starting over, starting over, starting over. Like you just can't get anything right and you're just getting all these red lines marked all over your paper. And it's like, uh, but you fix it
Yeah.
and you just kind of move on from there.
Did you always know you wanted to be civil engineer, or how did that progression work from like high school to now?
Um,
Did you always know you wanted to be an engineer?
Not really. I feel like I almost kind of fell into it because in high school it was like you had the technical courses we could take and then always being part of like the misfits group or like the just everyone's kind of a little bit different. You had people doing like graphic arts and things like that. In the engineering courses, you had I think it was Mr. Hines that taught it
Mhm.
and they had different things that you could do in there. It was right across from the woodshop class, and just being able to play on a computer or like do things on a computer, we're like, okay, this seems like it could be fun. On the one
Mhm.
hand, you've got to show your work, but then you're able to do like design with Rivet, like computer programming, AutoCAD, or um, like learning how to think through problems. It seemed like it kind of made sense. And you go through the line alphabetically where you're like, aerospace, biomedical engineering. Oh, civil seems like the next thing. And then you start taking a couple of classes in college and it's like, this seems fun. It seems like something I can do, something I can understand. And the more I kept doing it, the more I kept liking it. And I don't know if I'd say it was like the lazy approach, but it's something that it felt like I was taking to it where like aerospace, mechanical engineering, it just felt like it was out there when you're talking about like thermodynamics or all these other things where you're having to get into like chemistry and that type of thing. And I was like, that's not my strong suit. Math is okay and you can kind of start from the beginning and go as far as you need to. And I always
Right.
felt that it made enough sense and like doing a co-op slash internship in college, being able to be out in the field as a technician and kind of be around other people that were from different parts of the country, different parts of the world is always interesting. So that's what kind of drew me to it.
That's awesome. And I forget at what point I realized this, but you all civil engineers are responsible for traffic flows, right?
Hmm.
And like designing things like Disney World's layout, that type of thing. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
So
What
as far as focus area for your career, you think you'll probably try to continue to go down the same path, or are there any other areas that interest you?
for now I think I'll keep going down the same path. I've always thought like from the time that I've done civil engineering as like a field of study and then trying to practice it in the real world. It's like the degree is one thing, but like an actual uh, civil engineer does a lot of land development, but then you break out into the other practices where it's like you have the like geotechnical engineers that do the foundation design, you have the transportation guys, you have the structural people. But I do like that aspect where it kind of touches on everything. And I've always just wanted to do a good job as like a competent engineer where it's like, okay, I can take this problem, break it down, and kind of solve it or explain the process of getting to the end result to someone in as simplest terms as possible or as something that's effective enough to help them. And so far, I think it's something that I can continue to do. Like there's things you could do on the side, like maybe podcasting or like AI training. That seems to be the thing where it's not a. I think it's something good to kind of like dip your toe into, but I'd say the path that I'm going on for the moment is what I'd like to stay in, at least for a couple more years.
Gotcha. Yeah, I really enjoyed following the podcast. What kind of led you to do that? I was curious because it's you've been doing it for a while now, and you do a great job, and listened to some interviews over the last year, and they're always fun to follow. So, what kind of drove you to try it? Was it just on a whim one day? You're like, I think I'd like to give it a go, or yeah.
Somewhat. I felt like I needed a hobby at some point or something to kind of put my time into, something I could practice. I liked listening to a lot of podcasts, so it felt like, hey, why not try it for myself? And around the time that I started 2019, I was kind of at a crossroads, so to speak. But also, I guess it was like either election was election season was coming up, and like we just went through an election season, and people just have this thing where like the news ramps up and like it's either people telling you what to think, how to think, or everyone being at each other's throats. And I kind of just got tired of that. And I figured doing personal development on the side and getting to meet different people, like you don't really talk politics, news, and things like that when you're interacting with somebody else. You care about who they are, like what they're about, and you see people for people. So I thought it would be worthwhile to highlight that and just kind of see where it goes because I think when you take away a lot of the scripts that we kind of run on or the biases that we developed or that were kind of imposed on us, I think you get to see the best part of humans like kind of thriving in life. And there's not a lot of there's not I wouldn't say maybe there's not a lot of stress involved with it, but I think it's a breath of fresh air for me to be able to do this and to actually set time aside to connect with people like yourself, people that I've known, people that I'm meeting for the first time, and to see how it goes, not try to make it a thing, like kind of go in without okay, this is how it's going to be planned. Like maybe, yeah, there's some structure, some thought behind it, but I figured trying something with less stakes would kind of be a good way to spend some of my time.
Yeah, and I like my favorite thing about it is the long form conversation part of it. I've
Yeah,
never been interviewed or been on a podcast before, but that's why I like to listen to it is it's like I feel like it's so hard to have these types of conversations, and when you listen to two people have them, you almost feel like you're a part of it.
yeah, yeah.
You're not contributing, but you're internally you have this internal dialogue going, like you're kind of following along and so like one of the biggest yeah, the biggest thing that I think that podcasts have kind of brought back to the world or long form communication because before podcasts, I don't, people just life goes moves fast and you have quick conversations and it's hard to really sit down. But I was on the road a lot with HD Supply, so I would listen to like a 3 or 4 hour podcast every day in my car. I can't really do that right now, but
Yeah,
I'll try to throw them on when I work out or whatnot.
that's a good point. And even what I found recently, it's like whether it's a podcast or a book, it's like even listening to things in chunks, even if it's just I got 15 minutes or I got five, it's listening to a little bit and kind of being able to come back to it in your library to be like, oh yeah, I did leave this thing here. And it's like this little treat you get.
Yeah. I on some of your podcasts I've listened to, you mentioned books you've read a lot. What type of books are you drawn to?
I've done, I started out with a lot of just making sure I turn off this alarm so it doesn't go off on me. I've been drawn to a lot of personal development books. Some have been on like finance, on people to people communication. I guess you'd say, I want to say public speaking, but I don't think I have any public speaking books. Like some have been like psychological. I've read or I've maybe listened to more books than I've read, but um, I've
Read with
gotten,
your ears.
what's that?
Read with your ears.
Yeah,
That's what I like
yeah,
to say, tell people, you know.
yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like, it does do something different for you when you hear someone talk about something, but being able to go back through and like read it like with your eyes and with your voice, it's like, okay, this looks different than what I thought it was. And probably the podcast I probably spent the most time on recently has been about like how to read the Bible. It's
Mhm.
Bema, and it talks about being able to see it from the perspective of the people that it's given to and kind of stripping away some of the baggage maybe that I grew up with. And
Mhm.
I guess one of the things they always encourage with it is like discussion. And sometimes it's like you listen to a whole bunch of information or you read a lot of information. And sometimes I think of, do I have to like, is there going to be a test at the end of this? Do I have to like have the
Yeah.
right answers? And it's learning to kind of let go of that a little bit and trust that, okay, in discussion, there's going to be different perspectives brought up that you maybe didn't anticipate, or it's not going to go as smoothly as something that's planned out as a podcast where it's like someone said, okay, this is a topic we're going to talk about. These are the points we're going to highlight, and here are the takeaways that you're going to get. And one of the things it's taught me, it's like learning to celebrate the things that you don't understand so that you can when you do get an understanding of that thing you don't know yet, it'll be that much more great. And being able to um, have more things that you're glad about rather than just kind of going through life in frustration of like, I either I'm happy when I get it and I'm frustrated when I don't get it. And being able to learn to put that thing like that to the side has been challenging, or it's just been a little different.
Right. Do you always do nonfiction books or do you ever do fiction as
I
well?
I try to do some fiction books. I think maybe I did a James Patterson book. It was like a Alex Cross novel, and I was like, it really brought me in, but maybe I wasn't quite ready for what was going on. I was like, whoa, that
Yeah.
got serious really fast, and it's like maybe I don't listen to that before I go to sleep. But I've tried to.
Good
Uh,
point. Yeah, get the mind racing.
I'm trying to see if I've maybe watched more nonfiction, whether it's like a movie or something, or if I've listened to any. Because I want to say like I wanted to mix in something in there nonfiction, but a lot of it seems to be either like personal development or fiction or just something that's more trying to understand ancient stories or be like, oh, okay, I didn't know like what the importance of this was in high school. It just seemed like here's a thing people always talk about, the Odyssey, or like even
Mhm.
recently hearing like retellings of the fairy tale stories like Jack and the Beanstalk or Snow White. And hearing someone describe like the symbols behind it, and I was like, I had no clue that was in there. It's like, wow.
Yeah, that's cool. I try to rotate them. I try to go like nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction,
Mhm.
etc. And so I really enjoy fiction, but I don't want to read just all fiction because I feel like if I'm going to read, I need to benefit from
Yeah.
it personally a little bit. And the only benefit I get out of fiction books is it's probably increasing my ability to write or talk, but it's not like making me a debatable. Not it's not going to better you as a civil engineer or a salesperson or a person
Mhm.
or a husband or a wife. So like you said, personal development. When I do my nonfiction, I try to pick books that'll make me better at those things. And or I like to read like history books. But it's funny, recently I'm a big fantasy novel
Mhm.
fan and big Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings fan. And
Mhm.
I I never did all the Harry Potter books all the way through. So recently I went through and you can buy on Kindle like the whole set just in one giant book. And I read that and had a lot of fun with that. So
Nice.
yeah, that was a good time. Um, but yeah, I think I prefer fiction, but I know that I need to work in the nonfiction. So I like to do that. Like I read a David Goggins book his newest one recently.
Mhm.
Um, Anytime you need like a little motivational speech, pick up his book and read
Yeah.
it.
I think I started going through the first one, and maybe I grabbed his book and Cam Haines' book. And I
Yeah.
like a couple of those where it's like a autobiography or someone telling their story because it gives you different insights. And I guess if anything, I've been trying to learn how to take certain lessons and apply them when I can, but not get too bogged down in the like, okay, I've got to get through the cover to cover of this book before I can like move on. And that's where it's been like, okay, maybe you pick up 15 minutes here or a little bit there and like try to soak something up, but like if it doesn't get all in there, just let it go. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. That's a good point. I should try that more. I'm kind of wired to be a like a taskmaster
Hmm.
or like kind of live my days by like a to-do list or a checklist or a task list. And I view a book as like a task. Before I can
Yeah,
start
yeah,
another one, I need to finish one. But I would probably benefit from maybe reading a couple, two to three at once, and like you said, picking up passages here and there from different ones.
yeah.
I'll have to
I
try
guess
that.
everything's different for each season because sometimes it's like I think it was either last year or the year before. I was like, I'm gonna go through these four books and do 15 minutes a day on one of them, like start one day, one book, one day, the next book, and then kind of wrap back around to it. But then I guess something came up at one point and I just kind of like left them all. And then I think I may have tried to like pick up another book here and there, but then you just in a different headspace.
Yeah. So do you have family still in Dalton? Do you ever make your way
Yeah,
back?
yeah. My parents are still in Dalton, and I think most of my siblings were all kind of spread out through the states, but
Nice.
I still go back to Dalton every now and then, visit my parents.
Cool. Yeah. I've got we're all kind of spread out now. My mom's still in Dalton, but half brother, half sister, dad in Rome, and my sister in Ringgold. So we're kind of
Mm,
spread around the northwestern part of Georgia for the most part.
gotcha.
Um, we moved to Chattanooga, but we're actually about to move back to Atlanta, I think, sometime in the next year or so.
Okay.
Um, we've been here probably 2.5 years, but we moved here during COVID and
Hmm.
got here, and I think missed the conveniences of a bigger town, missed our friends that we had there, and we do have some extended family there as well. So we're planning to move back at some point in the near future.
Got you.
So yeah.
That's what's up. I guess what's something you're looking forward to this year, since it's like brand new year, just I guess the month the month is pretty much done. January's come and gone. It feels
Yeah.
like.
Man, it's gonna be a busy one probably. So, my youngest is turning 2, my oldest is turning 5. We're crossing, it seems like a milestone with the youngest on a regular basis. So it's fun to watch them grow. And um, the majority of my time spent just focusing on them and their growth. So look forward to seeing them continue to grow. Looking forward to hopefully moving back to Atlanta if we can find a house that checks all the boxes and
Mm,
fits our what I call buy box.
mm,
So move back to Atlanta, that'll be fun. Once we get there, not so much the moving part.
yeah.
The just you know work. Looking forward to continue to grow there, and yeah, it seems like time flies, and it's like so cliche to say, but between work and taking care of the 2 little ones and trying to be a good husband, it that kind of takes up the majority of my time. So
Mm,
maybe try to get back into jujitsu the latter part of the year if I feel like I could go down with an injury and not be too much of a pain for my wife to have to handle all the responsibilities. So um, yeah, no really big things that jump out. Just looking forward to continue to live life. And like you said earlier, I try my best to be present, not look too far into the future as well, because once I start trying to plan everything out and thinking about what we're doing for the holidays and whatnot, then I'm just kind of like looking to the next thing. And on a daily basis, I find myself like today, for example, okay, what are we gonna have for dinner? And then like the whole day I'm thinking about that. When are we gonna start cooking? But it's like I could be outside playing with my kids or being more present. So I really try to focus on that a little bit.
got you.
How about you?
I think for me, want to get my how do I say? I want to get my feet wet with work and really feel I don't know if settled's the word or comfortable kind of like with the day to day and not feel too antsy, kind of get over some of like the pre-year jitters, like do a good job with my day nighttime routine and make like quarterly plans for like small and big goals to reach, whether it's go explore somewhere I haven't been or try something like maybe find a jujitsu class or some way to work out that's both functional and new new in a sense, but also like use what it is that I already have that's working and kind of trust the process of what I'm working through and not get too wrapped up in like okay like it's all or nothing, like just let go of what hasn't worked to this point and like embrace what is working and what work I need to do to move forward.
That's awesome. Are you like are you a creature a habit? Do you need a routine on a daily basis, or is that the way you kind of operate? Like you typically follow a routine?
I think I try to follow a routine or it's like it's either a routine of doing of doing like some of the same things or like try to have things in the same place, like eat similar meals, but maybe vary them. So I would say I'm a creature of habit, but it's like if the habits aren't being like pushing, I'll
Hmm.
kind of revert back to like, oh, just homebody, sit, relax,
Hmm.
like not not do too much. I don't know if that makes sense. I think the
Yeah.
short answer is yes.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's easy to get out of that. I find myself like I'm operating at like the level I want to be at whenever I'm following a schedule or routine, and um, so I try to as well. And it's wake up, get everybody ready for the day or school, work
Mm,
out, work, get dinner ready, kids down, bed. Like that's just like a typical day. But like if I can just like structure the day like that and do that every day, then it seems to help versus going into the day like not having that outline ready, at least in my head.
yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So what do you got going on this week, and what have you found things to do in Augusta? It's probably too cold to disc golf.
Yeah, I haven't disc golf in months or probably the better part of a year at this point, but aside from recording a few podcasts, I didn't really plan on too much. Like I got moved in, started the month, and then unpacked. Some things I thought about maybe putting away, or like I still I still have some books from college I'm looking at that's here in front of me on this table, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I could just if I clear them away, whether it's throw them away or take them to, I don't know who could use them, then maybe that would clear up my mind. But at the same time, I'm like, I, I honestly haven't planned on, okay, I'm going to go do this thing. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure like Augusta State or plenty of places that would probably take the books happily. I was gonna ask if you still had some boxes to unpack. You,
Not, well, I
no.
think I unpacked most of them. There's like some books, like actually physical books that I'd read through or that I thought about going through. And there was going to be a bookshelf built, but like one that I got from IKEA that had the little wooden dowels on the side.
Oh yeah.
But for some reason, I can't seem to remember where I placed those. So I'm like, I've got the shelves and the sides, but it's not coming together anytime soon. So it's going to be there for the moment until I dig through the last of the boxes and see if it got in there somewhere in between the books or if it's somewhere else. I can't really put my finger on where exactly it is.
Hopefully it's not on the U-Haul.
No, no, I had help this time getting everything moved. So this was the first time in moving I didn't have to like load and unload anything. So that was a big help.
That's nice. I always tell myself I'm gonna do that when I move to outsource it, but
Mhm.
when the time comes to do it, and I'm like, so expensive, just gonna do it myself. But we're like, next time when we move back to Atlanta, we're gonna hire somebody. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully it was a perk of moving this time and I was like, okay, I guess that's neat. If you
yeah,
insist, I'll take you up on it.
that's awesome. Cool. It's been great catching up with you. I was gonna say I've seen a couple of the guys that we wrestled with in high school recently. And I went and saw Jay Adamson coaches Notre Dame now here in Chattanooga. I went and saw him wrestle at a local high school here this week.
Oh, nice.
The, or saw his team wrestle at a local high school here this week. So it's fun to go see those things and catch up with people I haven't talked to. And what's it been now? Like I guess
15 years plus.
yeah, 15, 20 years.
It's crazy how time flies like that. And I guess it kind of makes sense going back to where it is that you've been from where you grew up. Was that, how did you take to that? Like being in the similar areas, being in Chattanooga, being in Atlanta, and you're like, do you see it any different?
Um, so we moved here to have help with the little ones, just not having to like have a babysitter and whatnot. So that's what brought us back. And I wouldn't say I see it differently. I didn't we go to Chattanooga occasionally on the weekends.
Hmm.
It's funny, like you just kind of operate within an ecosystem or a bubble. And I
Yeah.
feel like within my little bubble here in East Brainerd in Chattanooga, it's like that's where we spend 95% of our time. And we'll go to downtown occasionally or go to like Lookout Mountain occasionally. But no, I mean, I don't see it differently. We have different, new friends and a new group of people, and
Hmm.
all of our time spent in this small area within Chattanooga. I'm sure when we move back to Atlanta, it'll be the same way. I feel like now I've been in like five different neighborhoods in Atlanta, and they're all different,
Yeah.
and you just kind of we spend the majority of our time in that one area. So it's great to get back to like where you grow up and see people occasionally. But no, I wouldn't say it looks pretty similar to me now than it did when we were there growing up. Um, One thing I do like to do, I've gotten older, is like travel, and that's one thing that I didn't really do it up until college graduation, but I
Hmm.
graduated from college and got a job and had the ability to maybe travel more than I had historically. And so that was like eye-opening to get out in the world and see things differently from like one area of this
Yeah.
big globe, right? And so that was like a big moment of growth for me personally, is just to see different ways of life and whatnot. So that was awesome. And my wife, she went to Florida and she graduated Florida and went to a rotational program. She was an engineer as
Hmm.
well, and she got to do a program with Siemens in Nuremberg, Germany, and she was
Oh, wow.
there for 8 months. And so we met in Atlanta, but here I am. I feel like this sheltered guy that's never traveled, never left the U.S. And she's been to all these places around Europe, and she's telling me about them. And it's like, man, I gotta go see the world. And so look forward to traveling more once the kids grow. But I say that's something that has changed me a little bit since before having been able to do that.
Yeah. That's pretty
Have you been
neat.
able to? Have you do you like to travel within the U.S. or
Yeah.
outside?
I've
Yeah.
I've liked traveling within the US, and the funny thing is like being able to make some trips here and there, like right out of college, it was that, like you said, being on a training program where like you're in a different city and you're there with different people that you may never see again. It's like, okay, hey, let's take opportunity to go do this. Let's go down to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, or
Mhm.
let's go to the local Six Flags, or even do like a city tour. And it's one of those things for me. I don't know if it's like being a civil engineer or seeing how the city kind of comes together. It's kind of like every city's, like you said, neighborhoods are kind of built similar. It's not as like some places are more unique to that place than others, but like you have a post office, you have the downtown area. It might be like we have in Dalton, it's like one road that's like the main
Mhm.
area, and you've
Main
got
Street.
Walnut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like every street's got like the same names, but in being able to even go to like other countries, whether it's like in the Caribbean or like Mexico or just south of Mexico, it's like it it encouraged me to look in my backyard, so to speak, and start to like, hey, let me discover what might be like the jewels in Georgia, and see what are
Yeah.
like those cities. Because when you go to like another state or another city, you usually try to ask people that are from there, like, what are the things to do? And people are like, well, we kind of hang out in our neighborhood and we don't really know what the tourist things are to do. But
Yeah.
being able to discover that in some areas, it's like, okay, hey, this is neat. This is why this business is here. This is why you should have this relationship with the people around you, because then it gives you that appreciation for who it is that's around you, and like why it makes you into a community. So those are some of the things I kind of found to be very neat about like getting out, getting to know people, getting around different people.
Yeah, and it's great to be able to explore other cultures and like for me personally, like culinary differences. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I'd had Vietnamese or Thai food prior to meeting my wife, and she introduced me to those things, and now those are probably my two favorite,
Mm.
types of foods. Like, and I don't think I ever knew pho existed, like
Oh yeah.
Vietnamese pho soup, right? And now, like any chance I get, especially a day like today when it's cold or it's been cold lately, it's like, all right, let's go get some pho. But
Yeah.
yeah, love trying new foods and feel like I was missing out on like half my life until I realized there are a lot of things better than just the typical American diet out there.
Yeah. I mean, also wintertime's good for chili, any kind of like broth, chicken noodle soup.
Oh, yeah. Yep, we have chili about once a week. That's an easy one for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I won't keep you too much unless you have more questions for me.
No, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you asking me to join you, and I really enjoy following the podcast. And nice to catch up. I was excited to hear about your move to Augusta. I didn't know that, and we'll be down in Atlanta, so we'll be a little bit closer. So maybe we can link up sometime soon.
For sure. Thank you for doing this, and it was a pleasure catching up, getting
Yeah,
to know a little bit about your background, a little bit about Jersey. It's like fun fact.
yeah, Jersey boy. Let me know.
Cool.
Awesome.
And from the first question I asked you, are you still who you said you were?
Yes, father, husband. Yeah,
Awesome.
friend. Yeah.
Appreciate you, Spencer. Thank you for doing this, and until we chat again.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Appreciate it.